Right, as we wrap up our Soda Dungeon 1 challenge, not 1, sorry, our Soda Dungeon 2 Soda Junkie only challenge, right? Was given the wonderful suggestion from Will to make some tier lists, right? Seeing as I have, some lengthy experience with the game over the past almost 2 years playing, right? But before we get into that, my plans for Soda Dungeon 2. So I am going to take a break. I think a break is well deserved at this point, because again, when it comes to playing Soda Dungeon 2, the majority of my play is what I would call active play. So the Soda Dungeon 2 is meant to be an idle game, right? You're meant to get to a certain point and you just leave it running and you enjoy just coming back to collecting stuff. But for the most part, I have been doing very active things with it. Things where I am playing consistently, constantly watching the game, constantly changing things and doing stuff. So it hasn't really been an idle game for me. So because of that, I am kind of burnt out. So we're going to go play Soda Dungeon 1. We'll do a playthrough of that. And then I do want to come back and I want to smash the hell out of the speedrun, right? I want to get sub 25, the any percent. I think with some quin out strategies, that is definitely doable. As long as they work the way I think they work. So we'll need to try that. And then for the full run, we've got it down to 18 hours. Right, but we weren't really trying when we got 18 hours, so I think I can definitely get probably sub 15 hours. A 10-hour run would be wonderful. If I can do 10 hours, then technically I should be able to find a block of time to stream it, get a run done in one sitting, because that way it's actually submittable to speedruns.com, and I can have the world record in that as well, right? It's nice having a 10-hour speedrun world record, right? So fast. But yeah, that aside, enough talk. Tier list. So we've got 6 here, right? So gems, accessories, armor, shields, weapons, and heroes. Obviously, I'm going to save the heroes to last, right? Because that's the big one that everyone will probably care about. So then, what should we start with? Well, we could do them in order, but to be honest, I think gems are kind of boring. So we'll probably, save that one for in between some good ones. Maybe between weapons and armor. Shields is also kind of boring. So we'll probably do like accessories, shields, weapons, gems, armor, heroes, or something like that. Either way, from that said, right, we'll start with accessories. And the way we are categorizing them is a little bit different, right? Instead of, like S tier, A tier, B, C, D, we are doing late game, irrelevant, mid game, irrelevant, early game, irrelevant. So some have much more use in different stages of the game than others, and I think this is the better way to sort of categorize them. And of course, some are just very irrelevant, especially in the late game, because you just sort of fly past when you'd want to use them. So yeah, so we'll start with this. I think there we go, presentation mode, although I will have to change. Actually, it's kind of nice, right? Even though it's cut off a little. Yeah, I think that'll do. I do want to obviously open up the wiki, because there's no way I can remember what everything does. I mean, back protector, damage reflection, crit, gold, magic, resistance to something, resistance to something. Yeah, I'm losing it. All right, let me open up the wiki and then we'll get into it. So, also, one thing to definitely note, right? These are my opinions. Again, while I do have some knowledge of the game, right, I wouldn't say it's infallible. Same word. So, if you have your own opinions, love to hear them. But let's crack onto it. So on the wiki, the first thing first is the Stone of Sight, right? So this allows you to see enemy HP. Now, obviously, this is an early game item. It has no use in the mid game or late game because, well, you can unlock the thing. Also, in terms of the late game, mid game, early game, we should probably discuss that. Early game is 1 to the Warrior Dimension, right? Then mid game is up until the point where you only really care about the 3 relics. So I would say most up unlocks, if you will. And then late game is when you're sort of going for the best. Oh, I had the P, no, I forgot the P. That does not have a D. There we go. That does not have a G. There we go. But yeah, and then the late game is where you're just trying to go for like the quickest speed, the best mining comp. Well, I guess. Well, I don't really know. What would you consider late game? That's a bit debatable. But yeah, we'll stick with these sort of categories, okay? So the stone is definitely, somewhat useful in the early game. I wouldn't say it's irrelevant. It is nice to see some enemies' HPs, especially some bosses, like the Good Lord, since he heals, to make sure you are out DPSing his healing. So I think that one will go there. The heal stone is definitely more important, okay? It's your main source of healing until you can consistently run nurses, and at the same time, it's still super useful in some of the earlier dimensions, because, well, you usually don't have much more than 20 or, say, 60 HP, in which case the heal stone is more than enough to really out-heal or sort of outlast enemy damage. Then we have the rock. Now, the rock doesn't see that much use, but at the same time, it's a 1.1 multiplier. So on the majority of classes, it is super useful because it does physical damage. It's 1.1 multiplier, and it does have a quick animation, and you also get back attacks with it. So I think despite people not really utilizing it, it should be utilized more than what it probably is, especially in the early game. Because again, it's a free just 0.1 extra damage. After that, we have Phantasmal Claw. Now, Phantasmal Claw is a bit interesting. I would say it is useful in the early game, not as useful as it could be, right? It's definitely more than the healing. In the mid game, right, it's the most useful item. In the late game, it's still the most useful item because it is the quickest animation for clearing a room. It's not quicker than default attacking. I'm pretty sure it's not quicker than the rock either, but because it hits everything, it is the quickest way to clear. Is there an easy way for me to duplicate items? I don't think there is, no. But yeah, so this should be number 1 in both categories, right? Because you're going to use it all through the mid game and through the late game. Okay, Lucky Clover. This as well. This is probably your best gold game, right? I would definitely, sacrifice the 0.1 damage to use it in the early game. The mid game, you kind of have better accessories. It is still useful, but you do have better accessories, so I wouldn't say it's useful there. And then late game, it just gets outscaled by some of the better items. Then we have the Magic Ring. Now, I don't use the Magic Ring. The plus 10 damage multiplier, all the multipliers for magic damage are not that great, right? By the time you really want to focus on magic damage for your build, you can surpass all the armor, shield, weapon, all those benefits through just upgrading the relic. In the early game, the extra 20 mana, especially on, say, nurses, it means you don't necessarily have to pick up the MP relic, right? You can go, usually I like to go HP first, then attack, and then gold. The HP first just because the chameleon's a bit of a nightmare, right, if you don't have enough healing. So, yeah, in that term, I'd probably put it, say, there, but I can see it having more use. It's definitely not irrelevant. It is irrelevant in the late and mid game, right? 20 mana and 10% boost is not significant, but I'd still probably run the Clover over the Magic Rings. 10 attack. Now this is substantial to me, right? 10 attack is super significant. It's 5 levels on the relic, right? Because it's 2 attack per level. Pretty sure that's correct. It is the best way to sort of up your damage. I wouldn't say it's better than the Clover, but I would still run it over the rock, right? Because it is, in most cases, 10 plus is greater than 0.1. Copper Bracelets. This is kind of irrelevant, but at the same time, it is somewhat necessary for the final boss, the Darkest Lord, and his second phase Monstrous Lord, if you will. But at the same time, for the majority of other places, it is irrelevant. In terms of Primal Land, it could see use, right? You stack this with the Copper Gems, but at the same time, it is super easy to outscale the Primal Lands in the Warrior Dimension, that I would just call this irrelevant, right? By the time you get enough copper to craft enough of them, it only has the one purpose. So because of that, and because you can still do the fight without it, right? The easiest thing to do is grab the chef, level them up to 9, use the not the Magma Souffle, what is it? I can't remember the food, but the one that cuts enemy HP by a quarter. That is the easiest way to deal with all the bosses, right? That's what I use on the speedrun. Okay, then we have the, Dark Amulet. Prevents stone and burn. One use, right, would be super useful for that one use, more so than the Copper Bracelet, because again, it's a flat, guaranteed prevent, but you can't craft it in time. You can easily do the Darker Lord, the one boss it's made for, before you complete the quest. Because by the time you get the quest, you're not 700 floors away. I'm pretty sure it's 700 floors for this one, and then 1,000 or 2,000 floors for the back protector. No, 1,000 for the back protector, and then there's one more, the Doodle Charm. Right? All of them, to me, are irrelevant. You can easily do the bosses without them, and they just take too long to unlock. I can see, again, their use being somewhat, same with the Copper Bracelet, but I think by the time you unlock them, or go through the effort to unlock them, there's no need. We've gone off track. Iron Ring. Iron Ring I use a lot, right, because it has the HP, it has MP, and it has attack, so it rolls somewhat of the, Power Glove with the Magic Ring, but at the same time, it's not super useful. I'd probably put it here. Well, actually, no, I'll put it a bit higher, because you can craft it. So if you take 6 iron with you between dimensions, you can start each run with them, which means you can usually progress decently. You can get some starting items and speed up your progression through the dimensions. No use whatsoever in the mid or late game. Silver necklace, right? So this, I would stick in the mid game more so. It's nice to have in the early game. Are you going to get enough silver unless you go over your way? Probably not. But in the mid game, because of the 10 item find, it's a great way to jumpstart finding stuff in the primal lands until you start getting the treasure hunter gem, right? The one that gives a flat 20, in which case that's outcompetes it, and then you'd usually want some other stuff in your accessory slots. But I would still say it has a decent use in the mid game. Late game, we're talking you're not really farming items, right? You have full sets of mythic items, so I'd say we'll stick it in the mid game for now. Okay, Back Protector, that's next on the list, which we've already done. Geode, I'm also going to stick in the mid game, right? It serves a far greater purpose in the mid and late game. In fact, it's somewhat more included in the late game because, well, no. You can get your ore find without the Geode. So there is a soft cap, if you will, for ore find, right? To make sure that you get ore nodes to appear at a certain rate because they do actually speed up runes, right? You get a ore node in a 2 enemy room, and then the 2 enemy room technically becomes a 1 enemy room, because now you can clear with the default attack rather than using Phantasmal Claw, which is a slight speed increase. So I'd say it's a mid-game item, because again, there are other ways to get ore find to the level you need for those endgame comps. It's not more useful than the Silver Pendant. Well, for farming uranium, I'm just trying to think if I ever stack them, or if I stack other stuff. I might still use the geodes on miners. I can't remember. We'll keep it in the mid-game. We'll keep it below the Silver Pendant for now. Essence Magnet. I, for the life of me, have never used this, right? Essence Find is severely undertuned in the game, the way it works. So you get to a point, and then it's a +1 to enemy drops for X amount, which is never significant, because you can scale gold much easier, and then you can just convert gold into essence. So I do think all Essence Find in the game is irrelevant at every stage, because in the early game, you never get enough to make it significant, and in the late game, you just completely outscale it. So I'm going to stick it in the mid-range, and I'm going to call it irrelevant. And it is also rare, so it's somewhat hard to find. Doodle Charm is next on the wiki, we've done that. Slowstone, late game, necessary, right? It slows down the Janitor, right? Outspeeds. Dark Lord, if you're still running them, outspeeds. The Chef outspeeds. Essentially, it allows you to organize your comp better. Because personally, I like having the Sword and Space Time on the Wizard, and then alternate. No, sorry. Personally, I don't. Everyone else, right, likes to have it on the Wizard, and then I like to alternate between whoever's attacking first. So for me, I don't use the Slowstone, but for a lot of people, I think they stick it on the Janitor, and then have the Wizard alternate between hitting and casting Foretell. So it is definitely a late game item. I'd say it's not as useful because you don't necessarily need it, but you always need the Phantasmal Claw. Knifey Glove. Irrelevant. Would be great in the late game if it didn't have a slow animation, right? So it's essentially the physical damage version of the Phantasmal Claw, but it has a really painfully slow animation. That means it will never be used. Prism of Precision. 10% crit, 5% attack increase. It is used in the best boss rush comp, right? So I'm going to actually call that mid-game, right? Farming credits from boss rush or farming greensmithing shards. And I think it is necessary for the best comp to hit the crit. No, the old best comp, right? There's that infinite comp that does something different, you don't need crit. I'm thinking of the comp where you run Blade Masters and max crit. It's still super useful for boss rush, so we'll stick it there. What's next? The Mop Bucket and Sign. Well, obviously, you want the Janitor for the end of the run. So mid-game, when you're still unlocking, you want them. Right, as soon as you find them, auto-equip until you get all your Janitors done, and you unlock the Janitor. Okay, the coin. The coin is a 50% chance to double or half enemy gold. Now, that's really important, because obviously it's always a net gain, right? If you get half sometimes, and then you get double some other times, well, you're always getting 1.5 times gold. So it is super useful. Again, do you use it in... I use it in the endgame, right? To me, it's more useful than the Slowstone. Because again, it is a 1.5 multiplier to all your gold, and then gold is your lifeblood, if you will, to actually upgrade relics to convert to essence. So super useful in the late game. I'd put it in the mid game too, pretty high as well, right? Because as soon as you find one, you want to use it. But because it's mythic, it is somewhat hard to find. So we'll stick it there. The Cape of Julius, crit damage. Again, I think this is for the boss rush. So we'll put it there, right, the boss rush items. But at the same time, the infinite comp no longer uses it. So I don't think it's too necessary. So you could almost call it irrelevant. Gauntlet of Alexandria, 50% MP increase, irrelevant. Right, irrelevant in either the mid game or late game. Again, you have access to the relic. Super easy to get enough MP where you stop running out. So yeah, I don't think it's necessary. Goggles, they go with the cape. 100% chance to crit. Again, in terms of boss rush, useful. If you're not running the crit comp, then not useful. Mask of Garrick, right? I'm going to call this super useful. Not better than anything else up here, but just having it on, say, a Dark Lord, so that the Dark Lord can't get one shot and they can still use Dark Savior, is a fantastic combo, right? It's one of the best balanced mythic items because it plays off of everything else. All the other ones sort of don't. Speaking of which, we'll actually jump to the flask since we're talking about MP. This is another one, right? It sort of neutralizes the need for the gauntlet. You don't need more mana if you can just set the wizard's cost to 1, right? Foretell becomes 1. Do you cast anything else? I guess the Phantasmal Claw, but the Phantasmal Claw is already super cheap. Again, it's a luxury. It's not necessary, so we'll stick it here. What did I skip? The Essence Multiplier. Again, this one, it's nice because it's a +1 Essence Multiplier, right? It's not percentages, it is +1, which is significant. But at the same time, again, you can outscale how much Essence you find super easily by just going all into gold. But because it's a +1, we'll say it's useful, and we will, I guess, stick it in the mid-game, probably above the boss rush items. But I wouldn't say it's, again, necessary, because, again, you just want to invest everything into gold find. You can never scale Essence enough in the late game to be significant. Okay, the Circuit of Binary. Again, 100% boost to magic attack is not enough to me, right? Again, it just stacks with the relic. It doesn't act as a multiplier, so I would say it's irrelevant. You'd want to use it, I guess, to scale up in the late game, but 100% is nowhere near enough. The Wraps, right? Super speed. Kind of out-utilizes the stone. Do you want to sacrifice a slot to, say, stick it on the wizard? Probably not, no. But at the same time, if you're going to use a stone, you might as well use this to sort of adjust the speed of your comp. Okay, the Belts of Barris. This I do like to use, right? I like to have a blacksmith with taunt. The math, I haven't done exactly, but I do believe that with the rate of ambushes in the Primal Lands, having a blacksmith taunt and then one-shot the ambushing party is quicker than waiting for the turn delay between them attacking and then your wizard attacking. It is a -1 though in the Sword Space and Time, which is why I don't know if it is quicker. It might be equivalent, but we'll stick it at the end of the late game for now. The Soul of Oranos prevents all status effects. Definitely useful. I stick it on the wizard, can never be stunned, can never be petrified. Super useful. All you really need to say. Jade Talisman, regen. Would be fantastic if you get the materials to craft it. It would be fantastic in the early game, I think, sorry. If you get all the materials to craft it, you can never, right, when you want to use it, you can't get all the necessary materials. Again, unless you are out of your way. So we're not going to stick it. Anyway, it's irrelevant. The Malachite Talisman, your main source of withering. I use it still in the late game to hit the odds. So, you know, somewhere here, right? It'd always be included because it's a attack increase, HP increase, and withering's super important for scaling. So we'll stick it in the mid game, but yeah, it could go in either of them. Probably not more than the mob bucket though. The Opal Talisman, chance to evade and damage reduction. I think this is irrelevant too. You'd want to use it in the early game. You'd probably want to. Well, does anyone really run an evasion comp? Probably not. Yeah, it's just irrelevant. It's another one where if you could get the materials to craft it, be useful. You can't, so there's no point to it. The I hate this all. Labradorite, right? It's basically just dog gem. Essence multiply and gold multiply. The gold multiply is super important, right? So it's up there with the coin, not as useful as the coin, but again, you just want to scale around gold. So we'll stick it there. The fishing rod. I, for the life of me, have never fished. Right, so I have no idea. Pretty sure it's irrelevant. I'm pretty sure the bonuses you get from fishing aren't worth going out of your way to fish. So I do think it's irrelevant. Okay, that wasn't too bad. That is the ranking for accessories. I don't know, what do you think? Was I close? Right, would you change anything up? Let me know. and we will, again, alternate between this and videos. So for now, it should still be the wrapping up of SD2, the So Junkie Only challenge, and then starting So Dungeon 1, because obviously we'll have 6 of these. I think there's 2 episodes left of the So Junkie, and then, well, I'll be starting SD1 soon. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. See ya.